Hello, everyone. My name is Luisa, and I'm the Education and Outreach Specialist with the education team at the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And we're going to go ahead and start with my slides permit. Yeah, so we like to begin, the education team, we like to begin every single one of our workshops with the discussion of the meaning of food. So again, as we begin to discuss food insecurity and what it means to be hungry, I want to take a minute and to talk about how food creates meaning in our lives. Food means so much to us beyond the actual thing that we eat, beyond calories. It connects us to each other. Connects us to many aspects of our lives. I know in the food banking world, we sometimes get caught up in the data, we get caught up in the figures of how many pounds are moving in, how many pounds are going out into the community. So I want to invite you to come up with words that describe what food means to you. And I want you to enter your answers into the chat box or to unmute yourselves and just let us know what food means to you. And Lindy's gonna jump in and read some of those from the chat box. So please share with us your thoughts. And Lindy is actually, she is the senior education manager in our team. So she's also the staff of the Atlanta Community Food Bank. She's celebrating her 19th year today, so very exciting.
Thanks, Louisa. So I'm seeing some really great stuff here. Comfort, food means comfort. A couple of people have said that. Family, Tina says comfort and family. Sarah says bonding, absolutely. Tina says survival.
Definitely.
Elemental is right. Nourishment, enjoyment, nutrients, Maya. Leslie said nourishment and enjoyment. Fallon says community.
Definitely. Food means all of these, right? Food means love, it means community, it means culture, it means religion. So again, just wanting to highlight the fact that food means to us so much more than just calories, right? Than just what we need for survival. It symbolizes much more than that. So now I would like for us to share stories or memories by connecting some of the words that we just shared with each other. So I can start with my story. You know that green mangoes, you see this beautiful picture of green mangoes. So they take me back to my childhood. As soon as I see them, I just get so excited, so happy, because growing up in Honduras, mangoes were everywhere. We had a huge mango tree in my backyard, and I have very fond memories of me climbing up that tree to get mangoes with my brother, with my cousins. And it's just, again, one of my favorite memories as a kid. So as soon as I see a mango, to me, that symbolizes all of those words that we said, right? Family, love, nostalgia. Again, food is how we express where we come from. It's embedded in our personal histories and our connections. So I'm gonna take a moment, and I'm actually gonna stop sharing my screen to ask you if you would like to share a food memory or a story that you have with food. So I wanna go back and stop sharing my screen so that you guys can either enter that in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and share this story with us.
There's so few of us. You feel free to show your so we can see your face. Be brave.
I know, Lindy, you have a good story too, so you might want to open it up.
You know, my story, you know, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I was realizing that I was talking about hunger every day, but I wasn't talking about, you know, what Louisa said, like what food means to us. And I have this, when I was a little girl, we lived for a few years right near my grandparents. And so they lived really close to the land. They always had a garden. They'd been a farm before. And so every summer we'd have these picnics in the summertime. And it was always, you know, fresh corn on the cob and homegrown tomatoes. And so when I bite into a really fresh ear of corn, I'm transported to my grandparents. And so, I mean, I think another thing that hasn't been brought up yet, I don't think, is food is memory, right? And it really winds up connecting us to, I think Fallon said family, to family, but also the memories of people. So recipes get passed down, tastes and flavors get passed down and connect us to people who aren't here anymore, which is a beautiful thing.
So I'll share one. This really sticks out to me. So being that I'm from Georgia, one of the things that I enjoyed with my grandpa, and was the only thing that any other family members would enjoy with him, was buttermilk and cornbread. So not Jiffy, but Southern cornbread. And I was the only grandchild that liked buttermilk with my cornbread. And I always, it was just something about that for me and him. And so that was something that has always made me think of him and brought back good memories. And so, and because, I don't drink buttermilk otherwise, but with cornbread, it's awesome. So that's my story.
That's great. It makes me think my dad loved buttermilk, and he'd always put salt and pepper in his buttermilk before he drank it.
Yeah, that's brave. Very brave.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Louisa.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you for sharing. Awesome.
Anybody else got a story, JP?
Yeah, I have one. So every year, like I'm sure many people have traditions for Christmas. My mom's side of the family always get together and we make Christmas cookies. And it was always my grandmother's recipe, and it started with our grandparents. And when they passed away and moved on, we've always continued that one tradition of always making these 4 same cookies together as a family. And we always wanted to, my grandmother wanted to cool them faster, so she always froze them. So we don't eat our cookies warm, lukewarm, they're always frozen. We always go in the freezer and pull them out, eat them like that, and then go back in.
That's hilarious. That's amazing.
And for us to not eat them frozen, it's not right.
That's a perfect example of how food is just so embedded in who you are, right? In your family's history, in your personal history. That's awesome. We have time for one more story. Does anybody want to share?
Maya?
She looks like she wants to.
Okay, I'll share something. Something that, like a memory and a joy that food brings to me. I have a 7-year-old daughter. Her name is Cassie. And so something that we do is during the holidays, we do traditionally make cookies together as a family. So that is a story, and it's something that she really looks forward to. We have fun making them from scratch and, creating memories from that. So.
Definitely.
Awesome. I like that idea, creating memories.
Creating memories, definitely, yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and continue sharing my screen. Again, the reason why when we talk about this is just, again, to highlight the fact that food just means so much to us. 1 second. I'm having technical difficulties here. I'm sorry.
One more thing that I wanted, while you're getting your screen up, I wanted to kind of follow up with that on is the fact that when you're talking about a community that's food secure, then you're talking about a community that has connections to all of those things, right? The memory making, the foods that connect you to your personal history and your culture. When you have a food insecure, so you've got a community that's coming together. But when you have a food insecure community, just to kind of wrap this in, you have a community that is not necessarily as connected to those foods and those memories and that ability to express who they are. And we just want to underscore how devastating that can be. So I just wanted to kind of pop that in there.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Lindy. So as we move forward, I want to let you guys know, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about the history of the community food bank. We talked about this in our previous workshop that we had earlier this month. We were, I believe it was July 7th, or was it 9th? Can't remember, but it's a link posting that link to that workshop in the chat box. So I invite you guys to watch it if you haven't watched it yet, or just tune into it. But just briefly, I will say that we were founded in 1979. Bill Bowling, who's right here, he is the founder of the Atlanta Community Food Bank. We've celebrated our 40th year anniversary last year. So we began at the basement of St. Luke's Episcopal Church with only 25 partner agencies. So Bill Bowling there identified several grocery stores that he went to, and he's like, hey, you know, this that you're not selling at the end of the day, week, or whatever it was, you know, he was able to rescue that food and then like distribute it amongst other nonprofits and community members that were wanting to help families and individuals in need. So that first year, he distributed around 15,000 pounds of food. Again, I went into a little bit more detail in our first workshop, but fast forward to today. So this is where we are today. 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, actually, we moved into this new fancy facility. We went again from a basement to this new building, which is 3 times the size of our previous one. We went from a couple of dozen staff to over 175, and we're now serving over 700 partner agencies in our 29 county service area. And this is our service area. I want to highlight that we're actually one of 7 Feeding America food banks in the state of Georgia. So we serve in partnership with, up here you see this dark orange, that's in partnership with the Chattanooga Area Food Bank, and then this area that's bordered by this black line indicates the Georgia Mountain Food Bank Service area. So we are not alone in the work that we do. We are part of the Feeding America Network, which forms a network of 200 food banks in the nation. So I just want to hold that up before we move forward to defining food insecurity and hunger. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture defines food insecurity as a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. Hunger, however, refers to a personal physical sensation of discomfort, while food insecurity refers to a lack of available financial resources for food at the household level. So again, we're able to measure, with food insecurity, we're able to measure if someone has access to the food they need, right? We're able to measure the fact that they've skipped meals, if they've been concerned about where their next meal is coming from, is this area a food desert? So those types of things we're able to measure. Whereas hunger is the individual physical sensation, right? That you feel maybe like before breakfast or right before lunch. So it's something that you can't necessarily measure. I do want to take a second though and acknowledge the fact that some of you in this call, right, there are staff and students that you might have covered this issue either, you know, surface covered or maybe went in depth in defining food insecurity and hunger in our communities. So I just want to take a second to acknowledge the fact that you guys might also be experts in this. Now, the operative word in that definition of food insecurity is access, right? The access to healthy, nutritious foods. Because we know that we have enough food in this country, right? We have enough food to feed everyone. So the lack of food is not a barrier, it's not a problem, it exists. But we do have enormous barriers between people and actual food, right? So this in between the people and food is what's a barrier to these families and individuals. So this being said, I want you to think about this, right? So when I say the words barrier to access, what comes to mind? Okay, so I want to see what you guys come up with. I want you to get your phones out or open a new tab on your browser. Lizzie is entering the link on the chat box, or you can text the word that you think of. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll share here. So go to this website and then or text what are some barriers to food access in our community that you can think of. I'll give you guys a few minutes to access that.
You do a better job of getting the link in here. It's not coming live. That link is not, it's not making a lot.
You can see it here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you can see it here. So you can either open a tab on your browser. It's, as it appears on screen, pollev.com/Louisa410484.
There we go. I got it. I got it. It just took me, I had to copy the right, not just what was on the page, but.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah.
Chat box now, y'all.
Great job, you guys. So you guys are coming, you're coming up with some really good ones.
See resources, transportation, finances, knowledge. This is great. Deserts, food deserts.
Yeah, food deserts for sure. I'll give you guys 20 more seconds.
It's both, the barriers are both psychological and physical. I think that's really interesting.
Definitely. Knowledge is coming up.
Work. I think that's great. Yeah, it's good.
Work. Mm-hmm.
This is beautiful. I love how this is forming.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, good job, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and feel free to like keep it coming as we talk through some of these. So you guys have, I mean, identified key barriers, right? I mean, you guys are obviously very knowledgeable of this topic and of the access to the barriers to access in our community. So we have transportation. That's definitely a huge one. It's probably one of the first ones to mind for most of us. Is the transportation and lack of, right? Am I able to get in a public transportation? First of all, if I have access to it, I have money to buy a MARTA card. Do I have time to go to it, right? Sometimes a lot of these offices, by the time that transportation, you've arranged transportation and you get there, you're outside of office hours or something like that, right? So transportation is definitely one of the big ones. I know, Lindy, you wanted to touch on one of these.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on a couple. I really am glad to see knowledge up there. I mean, I think it's a labyrinth of a system, multiple systems that are not always aligned with one another. If you're trying to access food, so you know, which ties into transportation, you have to go to multiple places. You have to know what those places are. You have to know what their hours are. So it's a real challenge, kind of knowing where you can go and how to access food. I think the other thing is resources that I'm glad somebody mentioned too, which is that can be on like the individual level, right? What a household's resources are, but it can also be the community resources. Is there even a food pantry within that community? Is there defects within that community? And then again, there's the resources that, you know, all of the government responses to hunger are budgeted, right? And so are they given enough budget to be able to do the work to really respond to needs in the community? So I think those are some really good ones that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, definitely. Another one that I see here that stands out to me is support systems. I think that is a huge one, right? Like, do you have the right support systems in place help you. I mean, and it's just so funny how it's just a network, right? They all tie into each other. So when I think support system, I also think of transportation, right? Do I have the support? Do I have a family member? Do I have a neighbor? Do I have a support system? Somebody that says, hey, Lisa, I can give you a ride here, right? Like it's so interesting to me how like I see all of these words and they all are really are kind of synonymous, right? Because they tie into each other. So that's just something that stands out to me that I wanna bring up. But thank you guys for sharing that. And we'll go back to our slideshow. So the next thing, if I can get my, give me 1 second, guys, sorry.
Technology.
Technology, I know. Why is it not? There we are. Okay. So I want you to guys, like the next thing that I want to do is I hope that you leave your browsers open and your phones next to you, because we're going to go ahead and use that polling feature one more time. But next I want you to think of who is food insecure. So for this part, I actually want you to use the chat box. I want you to answer this question. So when you think of general groups of population, who do you think is food insecure? So I'm going to go ahead and read those out to me because I can't see you guys.
Students, and I'm assuming you're saying college students. Yep, that's absolutely right. Tina says. Fallon says the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, senior citizens. Tina also adds people with disabilities, the disabled.
Definitely.
Speakers, Sarah says.
What was that last one? Sorry.
Non-English speakers.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Could be depending on your situation, yeah.
Yeah, and when you say non-English speakers, I also think of immigrants and refugees, right? Because those are also...
Absolutely, and JP built on that and said refugees. Fallon also says those with acute mental health issues.
Health issues, yes.
Definitely.
Children. Great, so these are great answers, you guys.
I'm going to add just regular health issues, right? So
regular, yeah, health. It could be physical health issues or mental health issues.
Yeah.
Definitely. So next, I want you. So we've thought about what these general populations are. So I've asked you to leave your phone out or your browser open, because now we're gonna go do another poll here in a second. So if you can still see in the chat box Lindy's link that she entered,
just put it in again,
or you can put it in, yeah, or she's put it in again. So I'm gonna go ahead and open our next poll.
Alan also added low or no income households.
Right. What in the food banking world we might call working families, right? And working families, like any family, look very different, right, to all of us. So it could be a senior that's raising children, or a single parent household. So working families look very different to all of us. So seeing on the screen now the next poll that I have. This is the last one. You won't have to see me struggle with technology again, hopefully. But I will answer this poll, so you can either go to the link as you see it, or text A, B, C, or D for your response. And I want you to answer the question: which population do you think experiences food insecurity the most? Okay, and we will go ahead and see those responses. Ooh, okay, so we have 20% of you guys saying seniors or elders, of you saying children, 20% saying those experiencing homelessness, and 40% say underemployed, unemployed. So I will say that 20% of you are right. So children is actually the correct answer. So that is the largest population experiencing food insecurity in our area. And I will actually talk a little bit more about how this group is growing, especially now due to COVID. We're experiencing I think it's a 66% increase of food insecure children in our area. We just wanna highlight that. And I don't know, Lindy, if there's anything that you want to add to that.
No, and I think it's just underscoring that those children are in those families, right? Of underemployed, unemployed, families that are experiencing homelessness, families that are dealing with health issues, you know, and just that it's not like this is a mutually exclusive list, as Louisa was pointing out earlier, that children represent all different populations and groups that we explore when we're doing research around food insecurity and hunger.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I want to, again, make sure I'm underscoring is that there is raising awareness and dispelling myths that someone who might be hungry is not just homeless or unemployed, right? It's not a mutually exclusive thing, right? So you don't necessarily have to be part of one, let's say, you know, an unemployed to not be here or to not be a veteran, right? Because that's another food insecure population that we see. So knowing also that someone can find themselves in difficult situations during moments like we're living now, right? The pandemic, or any other natural disaster for that matter. Government shutdown too, right? So I just want to make clear that anyone in our lives could need food assistance. You know, anyone could be just, you know, one crisis away from being food insecure. And I know someone in the chat box mentioned college students, right? In our previous workshop, Fallon mentioned a study or research study by the Hope Center at Temple University. And it's a research done on college students facing food insecurity. So I just want to hold that up, and Fallon does a beautiful job in our previous workshop at diving into this data. So I invite you guys to also look at that. But next I want to share a client story with you guys. So I will play this short clip.
A little girl handed me her report card, and she told me my grades are now better because I get breakfast every morning from the food pantry. And it broke my heart. No kid should have to worry about what they're going to eat before they go to school. My mom had to work 2 and 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And once I started having a family, I didn't want to live that way. I used to work for a cable company. I was out in the city doing a job, and I took a piece of coax through my eye. I lost a significant amount of eyesight, and I was left unemployed. Things took a turn for the worse for us. You have to decide whether you buy groceries or you put money on the light bill. Do you power your house? Do you heat your house? Or do you put food in your kid's stomach? Some days, me and my wife went without eating just to make sure the kids had enough. One thing you want to never do is be able to not provide for your family. And my wife was just insistent on, you know, yes, you have provided for us for years, but we need help right now. So I used to receive assistance here at the food pantry, and I am now actually a director here. The best thing that happened for me was getting hurt on my job and getting me back to the things that I love to do, and that's helping families. Seeing that light come back on once a family has been broken down, it is an amazing feeling, and there's no paycheck that can compensate for that. Families do fall on hard times. We all could be one paycheck away from being in their situation as well.
Lamont's story, one thing that stands out for me in this particular video is that he talks about making trade-offs, right? So thinking of whether paying the utility bill or putting food on the table, right? That tough decision. And that's actually a decision that a lot of families have, right? And that's those are the individuals and families that we talk about when we say food insecure. I do want to say that if you would like to hear more stories like Lamont's, you can go to the Feeding America channel. Lindy is entering that in the chat box too.
I'm there now. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you guys can go ahead and check it out. And there's many more stories like that. And like I said, you know, because I watched all of these stories, and as you click through them, you just see how everyone's story is so different. And yet it's very much alike, right? Like we're all vulnerable, right? We're all scared to ask for help. We're all one crisis away from a situation like this happening. So I invite you guys to check it out. But next, I want us to have a discussion and reflect on the following. So let's pretend that you are this family, right? So you and your spouse have 2 small children, ages 2 and 4, and you're expecting your 3rd child soon. So you can see on the screen here, we've broken it down for you. We have a monthly income, we have your expenses, your rent, utility, etc., and then we've totaled it out. Now, both of you and your spouse work full-time. One of you works for $10 an hour, and the other one works for $9 an hour. Your combined monthly income is $3,000. So this pregnancy has involved significant complications, including a hospital stay and gestational diabetes. Okay, so there's 2 things that I want to highlight with this information that I just shared with you. One is that both of you work full-time, $10 an hour and $9 an hour, right? So you're above that, oh my gosh, I can't.
Minimum wage.
The minimum wage, yes, thank you. We're both above the minimum wage. That's one thing that I want to point out. And the second thing is that we've just received a change in our health status, right? So the pregnancy has involved complications, and we now know that we have gestational diabetes, which means we might have to keep a more watchful eye on our diet. Just 2 things that I want to bring up in this scenario. So next, we're gonna go ahead and look at how much money is left for food, right? So we know what our income is, what our expenses are. So we have our income and we have our expenses. So how much do we have at the end of the month? We have $140 at the end of the month, right? So obviously, you know, it's not a lot of money, but we're gonna go ahead and break it down. We're gonna divide it by 30 to figure out how much money we have left per day. So we have $4.67 left per day. Okay, so that's for a family of 4, we're about to be 5, right? So we're gonna go ahead and break it down even more. We're gonna go ahead and divide that number by 5. The number that we get is 93 cents per person. So I want you guys to think about this, okay? I want you to absorb this. So what can you buy for 93 cents? And you don't have to type it in the chat box if you don't want to. I just want you to just think about that, right? And I know that what comes to mind is unhealthy foods, right? We think of maybe like candy, a bag of chips, something from the vending machine. So that's usually what comes to mind. And it's, needless to say, not very nutritious food, especially for someone in our family who is experiencing a change in their health status, which requires them to be more intentional with their diet. So what can this family do, right? So the first thing that I want us to look at is the responses to hunger. So we break down the responses to hunger into two separate buckets, okay? The first one is community responses, and the second one is government responses. So community responses are food banks, food pantries, community kitchens, shelters, churches, and then your inner circle, right? Your friends, your family. They are more varied in terms of service and capacity. They're often volunteer run, they're struggling for resources, and they look very different from community to community, right? So what the community responses are here in my neighborhood might be very different than the ones that you experience in your neighborhood. Now let's take a look at government responses. So those are SNAP, which is formerly known as food stamps, WIC, women, infants, and children. We have summer and school meals, and then we have the earned income tax credit, which is a tax credit that low-income families receive during tax season. So government responses, for the most part, look at income, household size, and poverty guidelines to determine eligibility. So let's, again, keep on working with this scenario of this family. So let's remember that we're currently a family of 4, and we're about to be a family of 5. Our yearly income, so we went ahead and did the math for you here. So our monthly income is 3,000, our yearly is 36,000. So in the poverty guidelines, this is where we're actually currently we're above the poverty guideline here. And then when we turn into a family of 5, we will continue to be we'll be above the poverty guideline as well. And now remember, this is a family that at the end of the day had 94 cents or 93 cents per family member to eat, right? So that's something that I just want you guys to absorb, because to me it's mind-boggling that when you say, oh, you know, you're living above the poverty guideline, and then you do the math after you do your budget and you break it down into, you find yourself with 93 cents per meal per person. So that's just something to think about.
And you know what, just to kind of build on that, I think, you know, especially since I think we have some faculty on staff here, so I'm sure many of you are probably even aware that I just want to underscore the fact that the way we measure poverty in this country is really outdated. It's so outdated that, as you'll see, the way we determine eligibility takes that into account. But you know, we're continuing to use a calculus that was used back in the 60s, and when we spent money on things very differently than we do now, and things that we spend a lot of money on now we weren't spending on then. So I just want to point out, it really kind of illuminates what Luis is illuminating is just, you know, we really need to change how we evaluate who's living in poverty and who isn't.
Right. Thank you, Lindy, for sharing that. Definitely. So we're going to go ahead and look a little bit closer at this family's or what they can do, right? So we're now looking at the eligibility guidelines for SNAP. Again, this is the program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. So with our family's monthly income of $3,000, this is where we are. So we, a family of currently a household of 4, are actually not eligible to receive food stamps, right? Because we make too much money. Like, let that sink in, right? This family is being turned away from DHS because they make too much money. They're not eligible to receive food stamps, right? A family that has just figured out that they have 93 cents to eat. I just kind of wanna you know, reiterate that. Now we can look at another program here. We're looking at WIC, right? So these are the guidelines for the eligibility guidelines for WIC, and this is monthly income of 3,000. We do qualify, right? So if you look at our gross, we're looking at our annual or our monthly income here, you can see that we we are under both as a family of 4 and as a family of 5. So one thing that I want to share, and I'm going to open it up to Lindy so she can offer her insights, but for these 2 benefits, SNAP and WIC, this working family would, first of all, right, because we mentioned we both have jobs, mom and dad have jobs. So we would have to take off of work to go and apply for these of these programs, right? So let me start with SNAP. So to receive SNAP benefits, it usually takes a couple of weeks once you filled out the application, which is a very lengthy process. So you fill out your application first, then you have to wait to be interviewed, right? So that interview most of the time is over the phone. So once you've received your phone call, and again, this is another barrier to access. That means if you have a phone, right? You might not have a phone. You might have a phone that often gets disconnected. And if the caseworker calls you while your phone is disconnected, then, you know, it's kind of like a tough luck situation. And then let's say that you do get your interview and that's successful. Then now you have to wait for your EBT card to get in the mail, right? And the EBT card is basically like a bank card. It's like a preloaded card that you're able to use in the grocery store. So that's SNAP. Now for WIC, one of the significant barriers here is that you have to take your child to the WIC office for your appointment. So we talked about barriers earlier, and that's just a huge one for working families, because now it means that me, a working mom, has to take off of work first. Now I have to go to the daycare or to my family member's house or whoever's taking care of my child while I'm at work, pick the child up and now go to the office. And so it just becomes a very strenuous process. So I want us to just go ahead and kind of like tie that in, think of all of those barriers that we mentioned a few minutes ago, and how they tie into access to food and to resources in this situation. And Lindy, I don't know if there's anything else that you...
Yeah, no, I think you covered everything. I think the only other things I would add is just sort of highlighting how eligibility for SNAP, your gross annual income needs to be at 130% of poverty, so above 100% of poverty, it allows for that. But WIC allows for a wider range, so you significant more money and still be eligible for WIC, so it can really start to help middle income households as well. And I think that's great, but it also shows that we have some flexibility policy-wise to impact eligibility criteria. And eligibility didn't really come up, I don't think, in our kind of listing of barriers in this round. And I think that's a really important barrier to access, is who's eligible for programs that can really help nourish their families.
It does tie into the information and knowledge barriers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Highlighted, right? I mean, just knowing that these are the income guideline or the eligibility guidelines for these programs, because let's say that I do take the day off, right, without paying, most likely, to go to the SNAP, to apply for SNAP, right, stand in line for, you know, however many hours you stand in line, only to find out that I'm not eligible, right? So now I've wasted my resources, I've wasted my time, my money, transportation perhaps, in order to find out only that I'm not eligible, right? And so again, that knowledge becomes a barrier, right? Because I could have used that time to go to the WIC office, a program that I am eligible for. Now I'm gonna have to you know, take 2 days off of work where I could have just taken 1, right? That's definitely something to think about. Okay, and then some of you guys might be wondering, given the current situation that we're living through right now, what our COVID-19 response looks like. So I'm going to share with you guys this short video so that you guys can gain some insight on what that looks like. You guys able to see it?
Yeah.
We're working overtime here at the food bank. We're doing everything we can to get as much food to as many people as possible during this crisis. And we know that it's going to require tremendous resources for us to sustain this response. You can help us help our community get back on its feet after this disaster.
The Atlanta Community Food Bank is mobilized by really just trying to get as many resources on hand as possible, whether it's food, people, trucks, financial donations. We depend on our community to help us keep going, helping us with food, helping us with identifying where the need is, and just to continuing to get the word out in the community about the resources that we're able to provide, whether it's from the food bank directly or from our partner agencies throughout our 29 county region. We are there for the community, and the community is there for us.
What keeps us going is the incredible support for many people who are out of work right now, who have been laid off, who were already struggling. We're essentially their grocery store. acfb.org. Your donation will help us get more food. It will help us deliver more food.
There you go.
And it will help us get that food to the people who need it today. And if you know someone who needs help, you can find a pantry near you, again at our website, acfb.org.
Awesome. And you guys were actually also able to take a sneak peek into our new fancy building. But I do want to say something that stands out to me, and I know some of the other education team members also, is when Kyle, our CEO, says, you know, we are serving essentially as grocery stores, right, for all of these families that we're assisting. So with that, I just want to point out here, this is the impact that COVID-19 has had on general population in our service area, and here we're comparing it to the entire state of Georgia. But if you look at just our service area, we're comparing it to 2018 because that's our latest data, but we are seeing a 47% increase, right? So we're going from 1 in 9 Georgians to 1 in 6 Georgians that are food insecure, right? So that's very compelling data that we're, and again, these 2020 numbers, of course, are projections. So I just want to let you guys know that. But also, we have the information. I mentioned it at the top of the call too, that I had the numbers for our child population, and I believe I did say it right. I believe I did say that we're having a 66% increase of food insecure children in our service area. So we're going from 1 in 7 to 1 in 4 Georgian kids that are facing food insecurity now. That's something that I wanted to share with you guys as we continue to gather more information. Another, I do want to share with you guys this tool, the interactive map. I believe Lindy is entering this for lengthy link.
I will be in just a second.
In the chat box. But this interactive map, you see this little bar here. If you are a data geek, like a lot of us food bankers are, you can go ahead and you can manipulate this little bar that you see here, move it back and forth, and you're able to see that contrast of those dark red colors, right, which are the most food insecure regions or counties in our service area. As they change, again, we are comparing rates 2018, which is the latest data, versus our 2020 projections. So that's something that you might, if you guys are working on any projects or anything like that, that you might want to look at this data. And I will share these numbers with you guys as well. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but again, we're seeing an increase in food insecurity in our region. I will say, so 18 million pounds of food have been provided to our neighbors in need, to our service area between the month of March and May. So this is actually twice what we typically distribute So in June, we actually distributed 10 million pounds of food, which is huge for us because that's actually what we distribute in 3 months. So just to reiterate and say that again, so just take it in, what we typically move in 3 months, sans COVID, like without COVID, we have moved in 1 month, right? So that's 10 million pounds of food. It's just to kind of, reiterate the fact that that is how much need is out there given the current pandemic. And this is just, again, some more numbers of stuff that has been evolving. 6,000 senior food boxes have been distributed at 78 different sites, 178 school distributions serving family and children, and we have awarded over $200,000 to 89 partner agencies to help them respond to the pandemic. So these are capacity grants. So these are that we've invested in our partner agency, saying we recognize that the current situation is not normal and that you need to build capacity, right, in order to meet the need. So just something that I want to point out. And of course, these numbers are evolving as we speak, just because the situation is evolving as we speak. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and share some more information with you guys, some more tools, as Cindy puts it into the chat box as well. How can you help, right? What can you do? So now we've shared this wealth of information with you guys. So what can you do? So one thing that you can do is donate. So you can either donate funds or host a food drive or a fundraiser, right? Lindy is entering that into the chat box, so that's one thing that you can do. I know that GSU staff and students are great contributors to the community. So one thing that I'm sure you're eager to hear is the volunteer aspect of it, right? So you can volunteer with us, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and with our partners. You can go to Volunteer Hub. Again, that link is being entered into the chat box, and we will share with you guys as well. We also have we have a partnership with Hands on Atlanta. You can go on their website, click on hunger and homeless, and there's opportunity there. We also have the link for the United Way. I will say that we recently opened our own food pantry that Atlanta Community Food Bank has in Stone Mountain, and we have limited volunteer opportunities there, but you can go to Volunteer Hub and sign up there.
I was just there helping out on Monday, and there was Georgia State students there helping, as a matter of fact.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can go ahead and participate with your fellow GSU peers. And I've heard great things about volunteering at the Community Food Center, which is, again, our own pantry that we just opened in Stone Mountain. We also invite you to advocate, right? So find your representative, contact them, tell them if this is an issue that you're passionate about, share something that you have learned today, and just,
Oops, that didn't click right.
Involved in that way. We also invite you to register to vote. I know we are nearing to that very exciting season of voting. So that's one thing that we at the Atlanta Community Food Bank want to make sure to share with you guys is just vote, 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 vote. And lastly, but not least, education. So continue participating in webinars like this, continue to educate yourself, and then share something that you have learned today here with your peers, with somebody that you know, or somebody that you don't know. So we invite you to do that too. And then I want to go ahead and close it by sharing this last resource with you. So one thing that I hope that has been made clear, especially during the time of COVID-19, is that anyone could face food insecurity, right? So having knowledge and raising awareness is just as important as taking action. So in case you or anyone that you know is facing food insecurity or is dangerously close, crisis away from facing food insecurity, here is some information that I invite you to share. So we have a text system. You can text find food. That's actually one word. So I apologize if it looks like 2 words, but it's actually just one word. So you text find food to the number that appears on screen, or you can text comida to that same number for our Spanish speaking community members. And you can also go online to our COVID-19 help map. This map is also a place to find partner agencies near you to see if they need volunteers, or again, as a resource to share with anyone that might be in need. And I invite you to either take a picture of this screen or to look at the resources that Lindy is entering into the chat box. With that, here is my email address for anyone who has any questions. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. See if anybody has any questions. Or Lindy, any final insights or thoughts that you want to share?
You know, I think the only thing I would just add is that, you know, COVID does make volunteering a little bit more difficult. We have closed our Hunger Center, which is where we sort food, but we do have, we are partnering with Hands On Atlanta, as Louisa said, to help get volunteers out to our mobile distributions. And we just, you know, we identify ones where we're trying to be as everybody's being as safe as they possibly can, but also just putting that on you as well. And we're, you know, the community food center is one place where we are also accepting volunteers. So I just wanted to underscore that. And I know we're running out of time for you guys.
We are running out of time for you guys. So if anyone has any questions, I hope you were able to see my email. If not, you will find me, I'm sure, at acfb.org. And with that, I thank everyone who is here.